So you're out there adventuring, protecting people, or taking over the world. Regardless of what you're doing, you're going to come across a bunch of items. Now, the rules for items, carrying them, wielding them, using them, as well as keeping them stored, they're all pretty simple, but it would be a shame to be along in your adventure and all of a sudden you find out you grab this last little item and all of a sudden you're clumsy, your movement speed has been reduced, and you're encumbered. Now let's go ahead and get into that today. So my name is Don. I'm trying to be the Sly Strategist, and let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to go ahead and start off with just a quick overview of carrying and using items. Now, as a character, there are three methods by which you can transport objects or move with objects, and that is holding objects, wearing objects, or stowing objects. Now, when items are held, they are grasped in the character's hands. Typically, in general, a character has two hands unless you have some particular part of your character build that makes it otherwise, and allowing them to either hold two items simultaneously or a single two-handed item, such as a two-handed sword, which would require the use of both hands. Now, when you're wearing items are placed in pockets on belts, bandoliers, weapon sheaths, or similar locations and can be quickly retrieved and put back, usually with a single action. Stowed items are stored in a backpack, bag of holding, or some other similar type of container, making them more challenging to access. Now, if you wish to draw a worn item or change the way you carry an item, you are going to need to perform the single action interact. And the only real exception to this rule is if you want to drop something, literally drop it on the ground. Then you would use the free action release. Now, changing equipment provides various methods for modifying items you are holding or carrying, along with a number of hands required for each action. Now, one last thing to keep in mind when you're talking about carrying certain items, that certain items might require several actions in order to utilize them. A good example, and this is one from the book, is consuming a potion that is worn on your belt would involve using an interact action to retrieve it from your belt and then a second action in order to drink it. And for this, you would basically activate it with that second action. Now that we've kind of covered a little bit about carrying and using items, let's go ahead and start talking about one of the things that you're going to run into with a lot of items is bulk. So when we talk about bulk, usually that is going to involve your strength score. And when it comes to transporting particularly heavy or cumbersome items, the bulk of these items can impede your movement and make things more challenging. And not just transporting, but burdening yourself with excessive amount of gear can have the same effect. If you want full plate or you want something along those lines, you need to make sure that your character can handle the full plate or what other items they want to wear in order to actually use them effectively. One quick way to look at this is to look at the bulk attribute, and the bulk attribute of an item indicates its level of difficulty to handle, and it tries to take into account factors such as its size, weight, and overall awkwardness. And once again, as mentioned kind of at the beginning, is individuals with a high strength score don't need to be too overly concerned about bulk unless they find themselves carrying multiple significant items. However, when you decide to grab that two-handed warhammer or put on that full plate, make sure you take a look using the calculations on your character sheet. If you're using a virtual tabletop, a lot of them will automatically do this math for you, but make sure you are not becoming encumbered by adding too many things at once. So let's go ahead and get into bulk limits. Now, bulk limits, you can carry an amount of bulk equal to 5 plus your strength modifier without a penalty. If you find yourself carrying any more, you are going to gain the encumbered condition. And you can't hold or carry more bulk than 10 plus your strength modifier. So if you had a +4 strength modifier, then you could only carry or hold 14 bulk. You just can't do any more than that. And you would be encumbered with a +4 strength modifier at 9. Now, when you are encumbered, you are carrying more weight. This is from the actual book. You are carrying more weight than you can manage. When you're encumbered, you're going to be clumsy 1, and take a negative 10-foot penalty to all your speeds. And as with all penalties to your speed, this can't reduce your speed below 5 feet. So if you are very slow, be it land speed, swim speed, whatever speed you have, you cannot be reduced below 5 feet. So you'll always be able to move a little bit, but 5 feet is not very far. Let's just say that. Now that we've kind of covered what bulk is and what bulk limits are, let's go ahead and go into bulk values. Now, individual items are going to have a bulk, and these items are going to be designated as having a bulk value. So items can be assigned a numerical value to represent their bulk, or they can be categorized as light, which is usually denoted with just an L, or negligible, and it's going to be denoted by a dash in the bulk field for the purpose of determining their bulk. And a good example of this, and we'll kind of pull it straight from the book, full plate armor has a bulk value of 4, whereas a longsword has a bulk value of 1. A dagger or scroll is considered light, and a piece of chalk is negligible. So if you did have a strength modifier of +4, you could wear the full plate armor and a longsword, which would give you 5, and then you get 4 more items before you start becoming, or 4 more bulk points before you start becoming encumbered. Now we talked about light and we talked about negligible, and let's go ahead and define those a little bit. When it comes to light items, 10 of any light item are equivalent to 1 bulk. So if you were to have a dagger being considered light, 10 daggers would equate to 1 bulk. Now, for the purposes of this, any remaining fraction is rounding down, meaning that 9 light items count as 0 bulk, whereas 11 or 12 light items would only count as 1 bulk. You always round it down. And then items with negligible bulk do not contribute to the overall bulk unless you attempt to carry an extensive quantity of these. It's not defined, and this is going to be determined by GM discretion, but you can think of it this way. A piece of chalk, as mentioned, is negligible. A case, by a case, I mean a 3 foot by 3 foot wooden crate full of chalk, is definitely going to have some bulk, and the GM would kind of determine that. Going a little bit further into that, we can talk about the bulk of coins. So coins are widely used for convenience and portability. However, as anybody who has carried around a pocket full of change or maybe had to do laundry and had gone to a public laundromat before, the cumulative weight of coins can still be significant. So to simplify the matters for the purposes of the math of Pathfinder, 1,000 coins, regardless of their denomination or combination, are considered 1 bulk. So it's generally unnecessary to calculate the bulk of coins in fractions of 1,000. Instead, any fraction of 1,000 should be rounded down. So just like we had with the other example for light, 999 coins would not be considered a 1 bulk, and 1,999 coins would only be counted as 1 bulk instead of 2 bulk. Now that we've talked about items, let's talk about some other things, and this would be the bulk of creatures, because there are times when you might have to carry a creature or perhaps one of your other player characters around. So the bulk of creatures is pretty well defined by a table, and we'll go ahead and we'll throw that up here. But a tiny creature would have a bulk of 1. A small creature would have a bulk of 3. A medium creature would have a bulk of 6. A large creature would have a bulk of 12. A huge creature would have a bulk of 24. And a gargantuan creature, unlikely you're going to be carrying one, but a gargantuan creature would have a bulk of 48. Now, in the book, they mention this, and I'll go ahead and say it and then try to give some type of example or some way for you to maybe think of it is, it is the typical bulk of a creature based on its size. However, the GM might adjust the number. Let's say you had a large creature, which would normally be a bulk of 12. If it was specifically described as large size for its species, they could increase the bulk. On the other side of it, if you had a creature that was held in a prison and was starved for months at a time, that creature's bulk might be reduced depending on the conditions of the creature at the time. Now, with bulks as high as we've seen for 48 for gargantuan or 24 for huge, There are instances where you may find it necessary to drag an object or a creature instead of carrying it. So, when you are dragging something, consider its bulk to be halved. Normally, you can only drag one thing at a time, requiring you to use both of your hands, and the dragging process is slower, typically at a rate that is approximately 50 feet per minute, unless you have a method to increase your speed. These could be things like a sled in a snowy or icy environment. It could be a wheeled cart on a road or going through a path. So there are ways that you could increase your speed by dragging. When you are calculating the bulk for dragging, consider the total bulk of the objects or items that are being dragged, and then you would have that value. And a good example they have once again from the book is if you have a sack filled with various goods. Let's say you have some weapons and you have some coins and you also have some treasure of some sorts, crowns and chalices, things like that. You would basically sum up the bulk values of all the items it contains rather than considering each item individually. And then for dragging purposes, you would have that amount. Now, I hope this video on carrying and using items was helpful to you. It is something that you generally don't think about until you've have too much and all of a sudden once again you're clumsy one and your speed is reduced, or there's things that you can't do, or you're in a situation where you have to drag one of your fellow players, or perhaps an unconscious creature that you need to bring back for a bounty and you don't know the rules. So I do hope that this did help you. And I hope you liked the video. And if you did, feel free to like, subscribe, or hit that notification bell like you always have to say. And I hope you have a great day and happy adventuring. Thanks.